The point interesting is that these people are coming from outside, but they give a term ancestral North Indian because he used to quote during one of his interviews that there was a lot of a political pressure while the research was going on that don't give the terminology that's coming outside the geographical boundaries of India, because in our part of the world, as I'm quoting the terms of this scientist who lead this study, he say that Europeans didn't bother what was the background more than 3,000 years before and how they were formed. And no part of the world people used to bother. Definitely this is our history and this is our biological makeup. We are made up from these people, but definitely it has nothing to do to the modern world. Instead of it, other than geneticists or archaeologists who have an interest or a specialty for this work, and people who want to know about their biological forefathers. But in our part of the world, these things are taken in a different way or a different political angle. So they give the term to this population, ancestral North Indian. So ancestral North Indian, till now we came up to the point where the mixture of Eastern Iranian and Indus Valley people who are living for a long time, or they were the mixture of Indus Valley plus the people who are coming up from the side of the Caucasus, or these Yamnaya people. This becoming a new cline in India that's known as genetic cline that's known as ancestral North Indian. And this was a time of a Bronze Age. And when we compare this Bronze Age time to the time in the Europe, this approximately matches. In the Europe, what happened? There was Anatolian farmers that spread the farming, just like here the farming was developed. There was a European hunter-gatherers coming up from the different stocks. And then this third proportion came up from the Yamnaya, and they got mixed with their proportion. And the same happened here in our part of the world, where these three components make up a new genetic line that's known as ancestral North Indian. So this was a time when the people start moving towards south, and the people who carry the genetic stuff from Indus Valley, and they're moving towards the southward direction. Now the new population that came up towards there is known as ancestral South Indian. And this was a time when the Dravidian culture or Dravidian languages starts evolving, 1700 BC or like 1600 BC. We saw the evolution of the farming and other tools and new language. Their languages start develop or their cultures start developing. One more element was there as an ancient population in India. This element was ancestral East Asian. What we use the term in archaeology or anthropology in the old days is a proto-Australoid that has a connection with Tibet and Burma. They were also very ancient population. And as we go towards the eastern direction of India, we found the admixture of this population is in a higher chunk. So now, when we look to the modern Indians, we all are in the different components are the admixture of ancestral North Indian, ancestral South Indians, and partly from ancestral East Indian. It depends from the region to region, starting right from Afghanistan as we move up to the down south of the peninsula. And today's genetic research are like a blueprint to us, which gave us a complete idea and how much we are carrying their genes or we are carrying their proportions. Sometimes it's vary from different communities to communities or people to people. But now what happens, this seems to show that there was a pre-mixing of the people. Indus Valley civilization got its time and it finished, but their impact on the people of South Asia is very strong and is still a lot of the legacy we are carrying from Indus Valley. The people from Yamnaya came, and these people start developing their own, what we say, the system or evolution of the languages and the culture. And this is how the complete admixture was built up. So we have ANI, that is ancestral North Indian. We have ASI, that is ancestral South Indian. We have ancient East Indians. And if you look today's any admixture of the population that is present among ourselves, we will find that it is represented in all of us. I can show you some of the samples that can easily accessed or available on many open source sites where you can see the different composition of what we say the today's reflection of the modern population. Now we'll come on this term later on. Let's go back to the study that revolutionized everything and how it was changed. I was just giving the outline of that study till now. So this was a study that took place in 2019. And I think more than 110 leading archaeologists and geneticists all across the world were involved in this study. The title of this study was Formation of Human Population in South and Central Asia. And the leading scientist was from Harvard University, United States. The co-authors was from India also. One of the leading co-authors, Vasan Shinde, was from India. So this was a collaborative study that took place across more than 20 countries. 3 broad geographical regions were selected. It was Iran, Turan. They give the term Turan interestingly because this is an area that we know: Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and Kyrgyzstan. And then Russia and partly Kazakhstan. So 523 ancient bones or the remnants of the DNA from the different ages have been selected. 182 was from Iran, 209 from the steppes, and 132 from northern Pakistan, that is known as Swat Valley. And how they did this study, what they took the different timelines, carbon-14 dating was done. This is one of the scientific tools that we know for estimating the ages of the population. Then they have a complete genomic sequencing of all these samples. And they took the different ages, like for example, Mesolithic or the Bronze Age, from 1200 or 12,000 BC to 1 BC. Then they used some of the Holocene, early Holocene ages. Then we come up to the Copper Age and the Bronze Age. Then we come to the much later ages, that is like 1200 BC from these sites. And by sequencing all these samples, what they start to collecting and make a gradient of the populations, starting from that very early hunter-gatherers of Iran and the admixture of Indus Valley to the time when the Yamnaya people came up in our scenario. Now, due to political pressures or what we say, the insecurity that persists in our part of the world, because the languages or the linguists are working from the long days, they know Indo-European languages, how it was evolved, and it is one of the big family. And these Yamnaya people, from the steppes of Europe and Central Asia, they spread all across the Europe and all across subcontinent, and also in some early civilizations of West Asia. So they make a big impact on our modern languages also. But in our part of the world, there is an insecurity always that who is a native and who is coming from outside. And this version came up with this today's socio-demographic, I would like to say the term in a more broad term, with certain identities, with certain religions. That's the most recent phenomena. The religions, the cultures are evolved. Just if we talk in the genetic history, this is a recent phenomenon. So due to this insecurity in our part of the world, they don't want to accept that certain proportion of the population coming up from outside. That has a huge impact on our modern history. So I don't know how it happened, but the results of this finding, where nowhere it is mentioned that the people of Indus Valley civilization speak Sanskrit, or nowhere it is mentioned that there was no migration from the people coming from steppes. On the other word, we would like to say that this study firmly approves that there was a migration, because you know that, as I told before, the samples was not only from India, the samples was from Iran, samples was from Turan, samples from Russia. So they make and sure that at which space of the time they find the steppes ancestry in these samples. Like, for example, I will give you a small example. BMAC, that's a part of a Turan culture, that's Bactria Margiana archaeological complex. When you take the samples of BMAC, you saw that these people in the BMAC before 2000 BC, they don't have any steppes DNA. So BMAC people was the outcome of Western hunter-gatherers, partly from their own populations, and what was mixed there. And the same was happening here in our place. Same was happening in a samples taken up from a Shehre Sokhta that's present in Iran. And they found 12 outliers bodies or the samples that probably traveled from Harappan Valley due to trade or some cultural exchange or whatever is this. But their climb is completely from Indus Valley. And they find it out that there was no steppes DNA. And then the one final research in which that was published in the Cell, another very renowned journal in the genetics, or we would like to say in the sciences. So in the Cell, the study was published by Vasan Shinde himself was the first author in this study. And this study was on the sample of a lady, or we would like to say, or ancestral lady, that is known as Rakhi Gadi site. It was taken. This was unfortunately due to the hot and humid environment. The DNA was not saved in our part of world, but they were able to retrieve the DNA from the Rakhi Gadi lady or the sample. And what this Rakhigadi lady sample reveals, they reveal two major things that we don't know before. One was that there was no Steppe's DNA in the Rakhigadi lady. So that itself shows that up to that time there was no Steppe's migration or no Steppe's pastoralist that we came to know later on as Aryans. Second thing, she was an admixture of again the same Iranians plus hunter-gatherers or the ancient population of India that was living here from long time. So what they used to give as ancient ancestral South Indian population. So if you're going to look, the second major breakthrough point what they came to reveal from this study, that farming was developed independently here in Indus Valley because the lineage from the Iranian hunter-gatherers was explained the time before the agriculture was evolved. So it seems that ancient Iranian hunter-gatherers mixed with the Indus Valley long before the agriculture was evolved. So this was a very positive point or a good point. We need to have a proud on that our Indus Valley civilization was independently developing, although with a cultural context. Second point, we need to think in the other way. Do we have any geographical boundaries? Yes, we have geographical boundaries in that days, but do we have any political boundaries? Does Iran exist? Does India exist? Does Pakistan exist? No, it was not. It was a planet where our ancestors were migrating from one place to other place, and this is how the humans were evolving in the different parts of the world. Does Europe exist? No, it doesn't exist. So, what was the point? That point is that yes, we owe our ancestral background or how the humanity was evolved, and these studies again give us an idea of connecting us with each other in a more better way. As the human genome is sequenced, we know that from first human, the different races were evolved, different people are evolved. Races again is now a derogatory term, it's not used no more. And we, all human beings, are that mixture in a different proportion of the different population. That's the point only. So why lying on this and by creating propaganda, I don't know, or by creating the sort of a media briefings that again reverse the findings, making it in a way that's not clear to the people or people who are outside the sphere of the research, they will not able to understand that there was no migration. Yes. How come you came to say that there was no migration? This is nowhere written. Languages or the linguistic part is not covered in this study. This is, the linguistic research is a separate research. Yes, they corroborate each other, and now linguistic research will get more strong evidences when they will connect with the genetic research. So this is how research goes on, archaeology and linguistics going to connect each other in a different form. So now in very short story, or cutting the long story in a short, all Indians or all South Asians today, what we have a proportion of ancestral North Indian, that an amalgamation of very old population of the first Indians with Eastern Iranian farmers or hunter-gatherers. Then the second client that developed after the arrival of Yamnaya people as ASI or ancestral South Indians. And the third client, what I talk about, probably brought the rice, and here the wheat came up, or in the first agricultural sites of our civilizations in North. And they are the ancestral East Asian. And we all are, in one sense or other sense, are innumerable permutation and combination of these admixtures. This is the point. So this, at one point, some politicians recently say that our genes are same. Yes, our genes are same to a certain extent with three populations or three major sources. But then, once the Yamnaya people came up here, and by the start or the fall of, like say, 2000 years before, a rigid Varna system or the caste system was evolved in Vedic civilization. And this caste system start stopping the endogamy, or start promoting the endogamy, and start making the silos, how the people start going to stratified or clustered in a different caste of the creeds. Once these caste and creeds were created, so what the exchange of the human genes was taking place before stopped to a certain extent. So now, very interestingly, when you go to the modern genetic results, you will find these admixtures that combine in different permutation and combinations. Sometimes within a village, you find the statistical distance between the two populations of different castes up to the extent what is now a difference between a North and Southern European. So in one way we are diverse, in other way we are connected with each other. So the definition of unity and diversity perfectly fit to this research. So there is no need for making an havoc. Again, I'm repeating the same sentence. Everybody is an outcome of admixture, and every human is a migrant in this planet. So this is a complete basis of what this scientific research used to tell us. I quoted two major articles. These are very, very extensive research. It's need a lot of biological understanding to how they used to do and how they created the gradients, how they form the gradients, and they check each and everything. I just quoted the salient features of these two research. And then we will shortly connect your questions, and let me just go to the last point or last research.